And joining us now with more on the latest security situation is Brigadier General Amir Avivi, founder and CEO of the Israel Defense and Security Forum. Thank you for joining us today.
A pleasure.
So these are critical days of negotiations that will determine the future course of this war. Attempts are being made to secure the release of additional hostages in phase one, but the IDF is now on high alert on the Gaza border. So what is your assessment? Are we heading towards renewed hostilities?
So we're talking about three possibilities. One is moving from stage one to stage two. I think this possibility is extremely low. The differences between Hamas and Israel are huge. Israel is demanding Hamas to get out of Gaza, to lay down the weapons and give us all the hostages, while Hamas wants to stay in Gaza in control and doesn't want to surrender. There is an option to extend furthermore the first stage and release as many hostages as possible on the first term, and this is realistic. Hamas might want more time to organize, to release more terrorists, to get more humanitarian aid. Hamas is afraid of an Israeli attack and might want more time, so we might see an extension in Israel trying to get as many hostages as possible. And there is a possibility that Israel will say at a certain point, either you give us all of the hostages or we're going in. These are the options. I hear more and more talking about extending the first stage, but there will be a moment when Hamas will stop releasing hostages and the army is getting ready for a decisive attack on Gaza, an attack we haven't seen that kind at all in the last 15 months. A completely different kind of attack that is going to be decisive in order to eradicate Hamas completely and also release the remaining hostages.
So even if phase one is extended, as you said, it's the more realistic scenario, at some point a return to the war would be inevitable.
Yes, unless Hamas gets to the conclusion that that's it, it's game over, and they need to get out of Gaza. If Hamas says at any point, at any given point, that they are going to release all the hostages, lay down the weapons, and leave Gaza, then they will be able to prevent a huge attack on them. Mm-hmm. But it's very hard to see Hamas getting to that conclusion without an attack into Gaza and further degrading their capabilities.
Mm-hmm. Now, Israel is also supposed to withdraw from the Philadelphia corridor as part of this, hostages for ceasefire agreement. How big of a security risk is this for Israel?
It's a huge security risk. Very bad idea. This will enable Hamas huge amounts of weapons to move from the Sinai Peninsula into Gaza. This might endanger hostages and enable Hamas to take hostages out of Gaza. And because this is such a big risk, I think that the chances that this will happen are very, very low. I don't see Israel so fast retreating from Philadelphia, and I don't hear talks about that in the last few weeks.
And I want to turn now to Egypt. Egypt has refused to take in any Palestinians since the beginning of this war, and it's also bolstered its military presence in the Sinai, breaking the peace agreement with Israel. This is something that has gone under the radar, but is now finally being addressed. What is your assessment of this?
Well, I think that the whole behavior of Egypt is very, very problematic. Egypt in the last years has been procuring weapons from the Russians. It got closer to China. And it seems like, in a way, it's moving from this Western alliance towards the east. The buildup of the Egyptian army is huge, and all their training is against Israel. So this is not peace. And also bringing endless amount of weapons through the Sinai Peninsula, enabling these weapons to go into Gaza, this is not also not exactly adherent to the peace agreement. Israel will have to take it very seriously. We'll have to demand them to retreat from the Sinai Peninsula according to the peace agreement. And I think that looking in the future at the buildup of the IDF in the long term would need to take into account the presence of this big army. Even if we have on paper a peace agreement, we don't know what the future holds. We'll have to be ready for any scenario.
Be ready for any scenario, of course. Brigadier General Amir Avivi, thank you so much for your analysis today.
My pleasure.